The Florida Gators have one of the toughest schedules in the country once again. But it doesn't matter. Go make the college football playoff.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Thursday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI. And again, if there's been any breaking news or if there is any breaking news, we'll talk about it next week. At the time that you're watching this, I have just gotten all 4 wisdom teeth removed. I feel annoying saying it. I'm just clarifying why this was recorded on Monday. But we are talking about the Florida Gators schedule this week, or talking about the Florida Gators schedule today. I did send a message to the Insider program, which is joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGators, or the link is in the description below. And this was one of the things that quite a few people asked about their schedule and record predictions, which I'm just mashing into one because I figured we can go game by game, right? And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to talk about the first 4 games right now. 3 games in the middle, and then the final 5 games at the end there. Just breaking it up by when the bye weeks fall. That's it. And the first 4, we talked about it yesterday with Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. Long Island to start the year. Not a scary matchup at all, right? I've been making the joke since I scheduled Long Island that Billy just wanted to pop off against a New York team. I get it. We've given him a lot of hell, myself and the other New Yorker fans. So we've given him a lot of hell. I get it. And all I hope is that you win by 40 plus, right? That's it. LIU is an FCS opponent, and Florida's only FCS opponent on schedule this year, of course. Last year, the FCS opponent was Samford, because don't forget, last year when Florida had their schedule, it was 11 Power 4 programs, and then Samford. That's it. There were no Group of 5 opponents, unless you count Mississippi State, which we're not. Maybe Florida State last year. They might have been a Group of 5 team last year. That was brutal for them. It was a tough go for them. It was a tough go for them. After the Long Island game is USF, and I think that it's going to be. I mean, first off, it's probably going to be a pretty exciting game. Going to be honest with you, USF, Alex Golesh, offense is fun. They're up tempo. They're spread. They've still got Byron Brown, so they're still going to be exciting there. Should be fun, and it's going to be honestly like I think that a couple things. One, I think this schedule is easier than it was last year. Right, and I've said this multiple times before. LSU replacing a lot of their offensive line and receiver room. I do think that their defense is going to be better this year than it was last year. You've got Garrett Nussmeier back. Sure, great. Miami replacing a lot of talent, like Cam Ward specifically, carried that offense at times. Texas replacing a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent still, but they're replacing a lot of talent. Arch Manning, his first season as a starter. We'll see how that goes. Texas A&M, I ain't scared of them. Think they're overrated. We'll talk about them. Mississippi State. Georgia, a little bit of a downswing here, and they've kind of been on a slight decline. They're still a fantastic team, but slight decline. Kentucky's worse than maybe they've been. Ole Miss is Ole Miss without Jackson Dart. Tennessee, no Nico. Like we'll talk about who should win these games and why, but this schedule is easier than last year. Like the teams that you're playing are still great programs. And they're still great teams, right? Like, I'm not saying LSU, Texas, even Miami. Like, I'm not saying that they're not going to be very good teams. I'm saying that I think a lot of the teams on the schedule are going to be worse than they were last year. And I think that Florida's at a spot where they were better than they were last year. You've got Lagway in year 2 and year 1 as the unquestioned starter. You've got the offensive line back. Four out of 5 of them are back starting. Defense, a lot of returning talent. And they got hot at the end of the year. If they can carry that over, whew, all right, so that's one. Okay. That I think the schedule is easier than it was last year. Again, not that I think it's super easy, but easier. And so I think that that schedule should be easier this year around, or this time around. And one of the things last year that I hated was not having that group of 5 opponent. Which also, to be fair, UCF was supposed to be the group of 5 opponent and then went to the Big 12. But I think not having the group of 5 opponent sucked. I think the way that Florida has it set up this year is good. I think maybe I would flip Miami and LSU, and I think that would be better. But starting with LIU, Long Island, starting with Long Island University, then going, so that's your FCS, then going to USF, group of 5, then you get into Power 4 play. And I feel like that's a good little, let's ramp it up as we get on. I feel like that's a great way to start the year. Whereas this is the first year, by the way, that I've covered Florida that they're not opening with a Power 4 opponent. Or I guess Power 5, because Utah, they were still the Power 5 at the time. So this is the first time since I've started covering Florida that they don't open the year with a power opponent, which is awesome. And so looking forward to seeing that rev up again. Long Island, USF should both be wins there. You got LSU next. And LSU, like on FB schedules, LSU's number 6. I just don't buy it as much. I really don't. And it's not to say that I view this as an easy win or anything. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying I don't buy the hype surrounding LSU right now. Again, replacing a lot of their receivers, a lot of their offensive line. It's going to be different, right? Defense, sure, going to be better. Nuss, I don't know how much better Garrett Nussmeier is going to get, honestly. I really don't. He might be capped out. He's a damn good quarterback. I don't know how much better he's going to get. So I don't know what the expectation is for him to develop, right? I think for me, the bigger deciding factor there is that this is going to be a night game. We already know it's going to be at 7:30 Eastern time on September 13th. It's going to be a night game in Death Valley. And DJ Lagway starts last year. We're Samford. Okay, started against Samford. Then he didn't start again until Kentucky, which was home. Georgia, which was neutral site. He missed the Texas game. Started at home versus LSU, at home versus Ole Miss, and on the road against FSU, which was just an embarrassing program last year. And then your bowl game was a neutral site game in Tampa, so not really a neutral site game. So the game against LSU in week 3 is going to be DJ Lagway's first true road experience. And that is just an absolutely brutal first true road game to play. At LSU at night. I've said this forever. I think Baton Rouge, Death Valley, at night is a top 3. We said this yesterday. I think it's a top 3 experience, a top 3 atmosphere in college football. It's incredible. It is. It's one of those things where you watch a rivalry game for LSU at night, and that's one of those games where you should show people, and I feel the same way about the Swamp for a rivalry game, especially at night. That's one of the games where you show people that aren't college football fans, and you go, just watch this, watch this atmosphere, and it's electric. And so I give LSU a lot of credit. That's going to be a really tough game. The following week, you've got at Miami, which in Florida, so you'd figure Florida Gators fans should probably be traveling well for that one. And based on Florida Gators fans that I know from the Twitter spaces and everything, it seemed like they're going to be traveling well. Miami, I think, is not going to be as good as they were last year. I think kind of similar, actually, to LSU in the sense of they're replacing a lot of their receivers. I think their defense is going to be better, but I think their offense might take a step back. Miami, especially because you don't have Cam Ward. I also will say, I don't know where the insane idea is that I've ever said Cam Ward was not good. I've always said that he was going to be a higher draft pick than Graham Mertz. So just about week 1, Graham Mertz would have the advantage because of Cam Ward coming over from the transfer portal. That's what I said last year. It was never a talent thing. It wasn't. So I think very highly of Cam Ward. I've said that since I interviewed him in, 2020, 2021, when he was at Incarnate Word. He's a hell of a football player. Really is. And Carson Beck, I'm not high on. So we'll see what that looks like. But I think that when you look at those first 4 games, 3-1 is what you got to go, right? Like you can go 1-1 with the LSU and Miami games. I'm not an idiot that's like, I want to win every single game. I'm going to cheer for my team to win every single game. But realistically, they're not going to win every single game. So I'm going to say, hey, go out there and go 3-1 in those first 4 games. 1-1 between LSU and Miami. Honestly, I'd probably prefer that you beat Miami so that you don't get swept by them in this little series. So go 1-1 in those first 4. Good start to the year. Honestly, that's a good start for me. We will talk about the next middle stretch when we get back with Locked On Gators. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every moment more exciting and every game more exciting. I'll tell you what, tennis has been super profitable for me this summer. I just want to throw that out there. You've already been following the action, so why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins over the FanDuel app today, or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day, every day. We are available daily and free, wherever it's in the podcast and on YouTube. And we're going to continue today by talking about the next 3 games on the Florida Gators schedule. And, of course, the first game after the – so we had the first 4 games. You said you go 3-1. That's fine. Like, that's the mark. That's what you got to do. You can't – I really don't think you can go worse than that. And I know that this is going to sound silly, but – last year, when we spoke about this schedule, we were, as in the 2024 schedule, we were talking about, well, through those first 7 games, you got to be 5-2. 5-2 is the worst you could be, right? And then you go into the final 5 games, you walk away with 1 or 2 of those, and you got a decent shot at the bowl game. Of course, the way that the season ended, or the way that the season went, was you started off, 3-3. Miami lost, Texas A&M lost, Tennessee lost. Wins against Samford, Mississippi State, and UCF. Okay? Then you beat Kentucky. You lost to Georgia. You lost to Texas. And then you didn't lose a game the rest of the way. But the way that we were talking about it was, you got to go 5-2, because if you're worse than 5-2, you're not a good enough team to win games at the end of the year. Then that changed, right? Here's the thing. While that changed, the thought process was still there, right? Like the process is still sound of if you lose games in the earlier part, in the easier part, you're probably going to lose games on the harder part. That's not how it worked last year. I'm not saying that's how it's going to work this year. But if you're going 2-2 to start the year, odds are you're not, because again, if you're going 2-2, we're saying 9-3 is probably the mark that you need to get to make the college football playoff. If you start 2-2, the odds of you going and losing 1 game the rest of the way when you've got 5 more ranked opponents, not super likely, right? So again, 3-1's the mark there. Then you have Texas out of the bye, and getting Texas out of the bye, it's actually a pretty solid spot for Florida, and Texas will be coming off a bye as well. So Texas opens with Ohio State. Then has group of 5 opponents in abundance, then a bye week, and then Florida. Whereas Florida, of course, has FCS, group of 5, Power 4 by Texas. The Texas game is really interesting, right? Because DJ Lagway didn't play last year against Texas. A lot of guys didn't play last year against Texas. DJ Lagway didn't get to play in the Texas game at all, so he didn't play at Texas, which I know is something that he was looking forward to. But there's still going to be a heavy Texas presence at this game, I'm assuming. I do think that they'll show up and they'll travel for this one. That's the first time that Texas has played in the Swamp in an insanely long time. And so going to be an exciting game, right? Both teams coming out the bye. Like, this is going to be teams are going to be well rested. It's going to be who game planned better and who executed that game plan better. And so Texas game, going to be a doozy, right? I view Texas, honestly, I'd say it's probably, if I had to like split it, I'd say Texas 55, Florida 45. This in terms of, you run the simulation 100 times. Texas probably wins at 55. Florida wins at 45. In if you're using my opinions of the teams, which maybe I'm lower on Texas than other people, but I just I just got to see it, honestly. Like, I'm not banking this Arch Manning's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Not doing it. Then you go at Texas A&M. I've said this many times before. I don't fear Kyle Field. I don't think Texas A&M is as good as advertised. I don't fear Kyle Field. I don't think Kyle Field is as scary as it used to be. And so I view Texas A&M as a game that Florida should win. I get it. It's a road game. It's Billy Napier, all that stuff. It's a game that Florida should win. By the way, the only road win that Billy Napier got in his first year at Florida, Texas A&M. So I throw that one out there. His only win his second year at Florida was South Carolina, just to take a jab at South Carolina. Then after Texas A&M, you've got Mississippi State. I think that I am higher on Mississippi State than a lot of other people are. A lot of that stems from just me. I enjoy Blake Shapen, right? I think Blake Shapen's a good quarterback. Got hurt last year, never really came to fruition, but I think Blake Shapen's a pretty good quarterback. That being said, Florida should dust them, okay? They should. Florida should absolutely decimate Mississippi State. Texas A&M, Mississippi State, 2-1 is the mark. And when I say the mark, I mean like that's the worst that you should be going in that stretch. You beat Texas, then I'll like if Florida beats Texas, I'll go, oh, they might lose to Texas A&M like hangover game. That's it. That's the only time that Texas A&M lost as excuse this year. So I think that looking at that, like again, similar to the first stretch where it's like, oh, go 1-1 LSU Miami, go 1-1 Texas A&M. Like if you beat Texas and drop to Texas A&M, I'm not gonna destroy you, right? If you lose to Texas, beat Texas A&M, good. Like you should beat them. So that's I look at that stretch as you go 2-1 there, and we're in good standing for the final stretch of the season, which is going to be a gauntlet. But right now, you should be 5-2 going into this. Right? You should be 5-2. Win 3 in the first stretch, 2 in the middle, and you get to drop 1 in each stretch. That's it. Okay. So 5-2 should be the bar here. Because we're no longer, like last year, we were having a conversation of, and this was very open from my side at least. Last year, we had the conversation of if you don't make a bowl game, you're probably going to get fired. That's it. That's always what it was you can't miss a bowl game 2 years in a row at the University of Florida. That was what we were talking about. And so when we were talking about the bar, we were saying you got to get to 6-7 wins, which they got to 7 regular season wins and then won a bowl game. Which, by the way, my prediction prior to the season was 7 wins. I was way off with where they were coming, but 7 wins was still what we were expecting. Once they got Elijah Badger, I said, okay, 7 wins. That's it. I was on 6, maybe 7. Got Badger, said 7. Now, that's not the expectation. The expectation isn't a bowl game. This is the University of Florida. You won 8 games last year. You've got a returning sophomore quarterback that went 6-0 in games that he started and finished 6-1 in games that he started. Period. You've got returning great defensive players, especially on the front. You've returned 4/5 of your offensive line. We are not talking about the measuring stick being making a bowl game. Welcome to Florida. It's year 4. It's college football playoff time. And I don't think I'm being dramatic at all when I say that. We're going to talk about this last stretch of the season when we get back with Locked On Gators. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. And to wrap up today's show, we are talking about this final 5-game stretch to end the season for the Florida Gators, which the games go Georgia, at Kentucky, at Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Florida State. Those are your final 5. Okay? Tennessee usually happens way earlier, obviously, but this is what we got for the schedule this year. The Georgia game is going to be interesting. We'll find out where Georgia is, right? We know they're going to have a great defense. They're always going to have that. We'll see what their offense is like at this point in time. I don't really know what it's going to look like, honestly. Like, in terms of having a large sample size of games, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, by the time they play, you're going to have a pretty decent sample size. At Kentucky, I don't remember the last time that I've thought a Kentucky team was as bad as this Kentucky team. And I'm not someone who's generally pretty high on Kentucky. This team looks bad. I don't know how else to say it. They just look awful. Zach Calzada, starting quarterback. Pretty brutal, not going to lie to you. So that's rough, right? At Ole Miss, they're replacing a lot. We spoke about this yesterday. They're replacing a lot. They've got a lot of depth guys returning that are supposed to play bigger roles, but who knows what that's going to look like on a bigger role or on a larger scale, we'll say. Austin Simmons, his first year as a starter. We'll see what that's like. At Ole Miss, we'll see how the road environment plays. Same thing with Kentucky. Kentucky fans always show up for the Florida game, which makes sense, right? Like, they only get to see their dad in their home state every other year. So Kentucky, we'll see. Ole Miss, we'll see how they show. We'll see how they show up. Florida should win, by the way, the Kentucky game. Then you got Tennessee. Then you have FSU. Similar to the first 2 stretches, there's games where you should go 1-1. And I think this year, or this stretch, that's Georgia and Ole Miss. Georgia and at Ole Miss. Florida's a better team than Kentucky. I mean, obviously, Florida's a better team than Ole Miss. Should be honest. That's the truth. Florida's a better team than Kentucky. Florida's a better team than Ole Miss. Florida's a better team than Tennessee. And Florida's a better team than Florida State. Georgia, I'd say they're really close. And I say that as someone that says Georgia's on a slight decline from when they were national champions. That's not me saying that, oh yeah, Georgia's horrible. Florida's so much better. I think they're pretty even. Okay? And so when I look at that final stretch, 4-1 in that stretch. That's it. Like 4-1 in that stretch. You should lose to either, or you could lose to either Georgia and Ole Miss, beat Kentucky, beat Tennessee, beat FSU, beat the team that you don't lose to out of Georgia, Ole Miss. But you have to go at worst 1-1 against Georgia and Ole Miss. Okay? 4-1 in that stretch. And as always, like, I know that people talk about, you know, what record do you need to make it to the college football playoff? If Florida had 8 regular season wins last year, they'd have been closer to the conversation for college football playoff, right? I think that's fair. They weren't in the conversation at all. Partially because of such an awful start, knocked them down so many pegs. But, you know, if you win that Tennessee game or the A&M game or the Miami game, like if you win any one of those, you have a strong case or a stronger case for the college football playoff. But here's the thing, you didn't. 9 wins there would have got you in. Because 8 wins, we're having a conversation about, you know, the hardest schedule ever. And you won 8 games against it. 9 wins last year, you're in. Instead of going 0-3 against Miami, Texas A&M, and Tennessee, you go 2-1 and you're in. Your losses to Georgia and Texas are 2 of the elite teams in the country. They're not going to kill you for that, the committee. 1 loss to another ranked team, they're not going to kill you for that. 2025, you need to go 9-3 to talk about the college football playoff. It is. You can lose one game in each stretch and make the college football playoff. That's the expectation. It's not just the goal. That's the expectation. You go 9-1 with Florida, or 9-3 with Florida's schedule, you're a college football playoff team. It's as simple as that. 9-3, you're in. They're not going to deny you. You're undeniable at that point. With this schedule, I don't care what the format is, because they're still talking about well, we might change the seating, whatever. I don't care about that. You go 9-3 with this schedule, you're in. It's as simple as that. And that's what the Florida Gators should do in 2025. If you win 8 games, Billy, you're not going to make the college football playoff. I'm also not going to be calling for your job if you win 8 games. I think that's my floor. You win less than 8, I will be calling for your job. Which, again, I've told this story before. I've spoken to Billy about this at the Senior Bowl. It's cool. It's fine. Billy knows. But 9-3, college football playoff team. 8 wins, I'm not calling for your job. Less than that, I am. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free, whether it's in the podcast and on YouTube. We will be back tomorrow to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.